So welcome, Rory, to Not Your Everyday Podcast.
Thank you, buddy.
Thank you for coming, and I really appreciate it. First of all, I just want to, for those who don't know who you are and what you do, past and present, could you just kind of give a summary of like what you do? And who you are.
Yeah, so I'm Rory Campbell. I've actually just left in June. 6 brilliant years at the John Lewis Partnership, the last 3 of which was a bit of a peculiar board position called Partnership Registrar, which worked for the chairman and effectively looked after the model of business, provided some independent views and opinions on what the business was doing to live up to its purpose. And now I have co-founded a consultancy called New Vantage Consulting, and we're going to focus on a bunch of stuff. So we're going to focus on leadership council, board cohesion, strategic alignment, change and implementation, those sorts of things. And that's me. That's what I do.
So how long were you at John Lewis for?
John Lewis for 6 years. About 6 years. Yeah.
So how did you end up at John Lewis, and what was the experience like at the top of the organisation?
Yeah. So prior to John Lewis, I was working for a small consultancy, management consultancy, and I'd been there for a couple of years. Really loved it. I had 2 jobs there at the same time, so lead consultant and operating director. And then the way these things are, I got a call one day saying, "Hey, we want to talk to you about an interesting job." And I sort of went through that process. If I tell you the funny end of it, after about 5 weeks of these conversations with the headhunter not telling me who the company was, I said, "Look, I've got nothing else to add. Let me know who it is." And she said, "Well, they're trying to decide whether they want to interview you or not, and I'm not going to tell you unless they want to interview you." But she dropped a hint. And she said it's a multi-billion-pound retailer, a head office in central London, and a head office in central London, and a head office in on the M4 corridor. And I had a lady working for me who English is her 6th language. Right? So you've now got the right mental image. And I called her in and I said, "Look, don't ask. Try and figure out who this is for me." It took her about 2 minutes, and she said it's either John Lewis or another business that will remain unnamed. So I phoned the headhunter back. And I said, "It's one of these two." And she said, "How do you feel about that?" And I said, "If it's that business, it's been lovely talking to you." And she said, "Great, I'll call you back next week." And what it was for me, really, I'd been working in a consultancy that was focused on helping businesses to connect to their sense of meaning, to think about their strategy and the conditions that the people were working in, and whether or not that really lived up to what they believed. And there I was looking at an organisation like John Lewis that started out like that. It's literally in the DNA of the business, and I just thought that's too good an opportunity, so I want to be involved. What was it like at the top of the business? In some senses, like at the top of any business, right? You've got titans of industry, people who are brilliant at what they do, who are passionate about what they do, and are competing in a fiercely difficult market. I mean, we can all see where retail's at the moment. It's under an awful lot of pressure, like many other sectors. So you've got leaders at the top of that business that are trying to figure out where the future is, what's changing, how they get there fast enough, and manage today's business at scale. I learned a lot about the size of that business and its nature, which I hadn't anticipated when I joined. It's easy when you talk about the big traditional retailers to forget how big they are. John Lewis Partnership is 84,000 people strong. 60,000 or so in Waitrose and the remainder in John Lewis, essentially. So it's a big business. So it was demanding at the top. It was exciting. I grew a lot. The last 3 years doing that job on the board, I've accelerated my learning, figured out what I'm good at, figured out what I'm really not good at. I've loved it. It's been a great opportunity. And my job day to day really was to work closely with the board, and in particular the managing director, to give her an independent perspective on things, whether that be in response to an opportunity or a challenge, or just sort of noticing where we're going over time and thinking about things with a slightly different angle more than anything. So very varied. Very varied.
So because what I explore in my podcast is the great moments, but also the difficult moments.
Yeah.
So what has been the most difficult moment or moments for you in John Lewis?
Do you know, probably the most difficult for me was not long after I started my board role, for a number of reasons. You can sort of intellectualize what it's like doing that job, and then you start doing it, and you're suddenly racked with with a lack of confidence. I remember being sat around the board table for probably my first couple of meetings. I don't think I said a word. Right. It's quite intimidating.
I can imagine.
I'm looking at a chap who's got 30 years of experience in retail. I'm looking at the then managing director who is master of the big picture, but I'll tell you what, he will tell you the 0.01% margin difference from 2 years ago to now, and master of the detail. I'm looking at the now MD who then was buying a brand or commercial director, who was just dynamic and really on point when it came to the propositions, and so on and so forth. And you sit there and you think, I'm doing a role which is not about a deep level of expertise in any one area. It's about understanding enough of them all in order to offer a perspective. How on earth can I do that when these guys seem to know everything? So I found that really, really intimidating. And in my first few months, it meant I wasn't me. I wasn't bringing the best of my game. I wasn't doing the things that make me able to contribute the way I can contribute. I was trying to find a way to fit in, and that was forced for me. And then after about maybe 7 or 8 months, I had had a bad conversation. So I had started the role on a secondment basis, and then 7 or 8 months later, I was asked if I wanted to apply for it permanently. And I thought, yeah, I'm up for that. I'll figure it out. I'll get a grip on it, but I'm up for that. And I had some second-hand feedback, which was someone effectively saying, I'm not so sure Rory's right for this job, and I was livid. I was livid because it was second-hand feedback. Right? They hadn't told me that directly, and I'd been working with them for 8 months, and they hadn't said that to me. So I ended up having quite a challenging confrontation one-to-one with them about their view, my view, where we differed. But there was truth in what they were saying. What they were drawing out really was I hadn't been as contributory as I needed to be in that role. And that took me some while, if I'm honest, to sort of pick myself back up. My first ever board job, and a pretty critical bit of feedback from a critical person is saying, I'm not so sure about that, dude. I felt really low about that. That's when I took up running. I don't like running. I'm a sprinter, long distance, not so much. And I was away with my family just for a long weekend, and I took some training kit, and I said to my wife, I'm going for a run. And the look on her face was, yeah, that ain't gonna last. And I went out running, and I ran 16 kilometers because I'm stubborn. And every kilometer, I was thinking, I'm not accepting that feedback. I'm not accepting how that's made me feel. I need to go back and do something about it. So it was a really difficult, but for me, it was really quite important because it made me sit up and think, what do I want to do? How do I want to be in that role? If I want to achieve this, I've got to listen. I've got to accept the fact that I haven't stepped up as I want to yet. But now I've got an opportunity to get that right. So that's probably one of, because there've been a few. that's probably one of the personally one of the more difficult moments. Yeah, that one has stuck with me. That was a turning point.
So how did you overcome it in the end? Like, what did you do?
So I in part I surprised myself, right? So I think it's easy when you've got second-hand, well maybe not easy. It could be easy when you've got second-hand difficult feedback to not confront it. But I was cross because I'm, at a risk of sounding egotistical, I knew I could do that job. I know what I'm good at, and there I was being told, yeah, not so much, and it made me cross. And so the first thing I did was have the direct, candid conversation with that individual, and that included me saying to them, if you've got a view, I don't expect to hear it secondhand. We've been working with each other all this time, and we're going to continue working with each other. Can we have the conversation? It included me doing my homework. So I didn't go into that conversation unprepared. I went into it having given real thought to how do I think I am doing? Where have I added value? Where have I not? And then, in my book, always being prepared to be really open. So being sat with him and saying, look, I know this has not landed well. I know I didn't get that bit right. However, in these areas, this is what I think. We just have a disagreement about it. and what I need from you to be successful is this, and I get what you need from me is that. But the reality is my role on that board was always a tricky balance, because in many respects I'm a peer of everyone around the board, including the managing director. The managing director's boss is the same as mine, it's the chairman. Yet, most of my time is spent with them, and the greatest point of appraisal of what value I'm bringing is by that group. So you have this constant balancing act and constant conflict. And then the only other thing I guess that I did was, well, I mentioned running. It's not flippant. Right? I recognised that I had spent a few months trying to immerse myself in their world, trying to find the ways to work that fitted the way they work. And the very reason why I was appointed was to bring a different perspective. And yet I'd been slowly trying to squash it because I was intimidated and was thinking, well, if I find a way of fitting in, then that'll be all right. And I've a reasonably long history of sort of depression and mental health issues and things like that. And one of the things I know is healthy body, healthy mind. Right, those two things are virtuous for me. So running wasn't sort of flippant. I took my running kit; it was clearly premeditated. Right? Yeah. This was about, you know what? If I want to be match fit up here, I've got to be match fit here. So I got fit, did some exercise. I got out. I thought about things and just felt a bit more like, right, I'm ready. I've got to be fit to face into this, up here and in here, and they both go hand in hand.
Yeah, no, that's a really inspiring and uplifting story, because it shows your determination and not to give up as well. So I really enjoyed that one. So we can kind of edit. How comfortable are you to talk about the depression and mental health issues?
Very comfortable.
Cool. So all right, cool. So you mentioned earlier that you went through depression and you had some mental health challenges. Could you talk a bit about what happened in that period?
Yeah. You're gonna get a history lesson, a history of Rory Campbell. So I know now. Obviously, I didn't at the point I'm about to describe. Excuse me. That for me, my mental health challenges go back to my dad dying when I was 12. In the middle of the night, which is important. I'll come back to that in a little while. In the middle of the night, about 1:30 in the morning, my dad died of an asthma attack. Wow. As I say, 12 years old. I was the youngest of three, or I am the youngest of three boys. Jules, my brother, was 15. My oldest brother Wayne was 18 at the time. He was starting his first year at university. And obviously my mum. And when that happened and you're 12 years old, you don't really know what to do with it, right? I grieved and got on with life in a funny way. And my mum did the most amazing job raising three boys in a row, where dad had been the breadwinner and all that sort of stuff. And I just kind of got on with things. And then at university, when I went to uni, I really struggled. In my first year, and certainly in my first semester, I didn't go out much. Now I can remember being in my halls of residence, watching people come back at 2 o'clock in the morning from their night out, and I was still in my room just watching the world go by. Right? I mean, what is up with that? And I didn't know why. And I can remember being in lectures, and I'd be sat there, and I'd suddenly think, I need to get out. I think I'm going to cry, and I really don't know why. And I'd go walking for 3 or 4 hours. My flatmates and what have you would be like, "Where did you disappear to?" And I'd disappear for hours because I just need to get things out of my system, and I didn't really know why. So I know now that I really struggled with depression through university, but I didn't identify it as that, and I didn't seek any help. I just struggled with it, and just moved on. And then roll forward to about 2004, something like that. I'm working for Lloyd's banking group, and I was in a particular part of the business. Was enjoying my work. I was in HR as a HR business partner. I'm doing great stuff, and if anything, everything I touch is working out. I'm like, okay, go here, nailed it. Could you help with that? Sorted it. And I'm thinking, this is good. This is really good. But you know that analogy of a swan, graceful on the top and the feet underneath. That was me. Right? I was inside working like a complete nutter to just try and keep an even keel, and I had started a really strange set of behaviours. Right? I'd get up in the morning, I'd get dressed as if my life depended on it, really quickly. I'd be out the front door, in the car, to drive to the office, and I would be driving well above the speed limit to get there at 6:30 in the morning, so that I had some time before anybody else arrived to get my act together. And then I had this week, and this is the week where things sort of just came to conclusion, if you like, where on the Monday I was high, and I was upbeat, and I felt joyous. I was like, wow, no, this is great. On the Tuesday, I came out of one meeting with my boss, who had said nothing untoward to me, but I came out and I was really angry. And I remember thinking, I don't know why I'm so angry with her. And on the Wednesday, I left the meeting and I went for a walk around the car park in floods of tears. And I remember going back inside thinking, I don't know why I'm crying. That's really strange. I was all over the place. It was a bank holiday weekend in August, in 2004. And on the Monday, the bank holiday Monday, my wife said, it's time to go to a friend of ours' birthday party. Are you coming? And I said, no, I've got too much to do. I need to get this done and get that done. And she was my girlfriend at the time, now my wife. And she clearly had seen this coming. And I remember her saying to me, do you think you might need to talk to somebody? And I explained it. Well, I've just so much on, you've no idea what it's like, blah, blah, blah. But something stuck. So she left, and I booted up the internet, and I say booted up because it must have been dial up then. Way back when, man. I booted it up, and I searched stress and depression. And one of the things I clicked on had like a checklist, like 25 signs of stress and depression. And I remember reading them. Clenching your jaw. Yeah, but everyone does that. Tick, everyone does it. Back pain. Yeah, I mean, come on, back pain's really common. Tick. Digestive problems. Yeah, but tick, 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 tick. 25 out of 25. And I sat there in our front room, bawling my eyes out. And I didn't say anything to my wife my girlfriend at the time, when she got back. The next morning, when I got up to go for work, I couldn't open the front door. My hand was shaking. And I sat on the edge of the bed, and she said, I'm taking you to the doctor. And actually that was a really powerful period for me. It was one of the reasons why I'm actually quite proud to talk about it, because I learned so much over the coming years. I learned so much. It was a really dark period initially, because the moment I opened the floodgates, well, guess what? The floods came. I can remember the doctor saying to me, I'm going to sign you off for 2 weeks because I want to figure something out. I want to know whether you're stressed or whether you're depressed. So I'm going to remove you from work for 2 weeks. And if after 2 weeks you seem a little bit better, we know it's stress. And we're going to talk about how you manage your stress. If after 2 weeks you know better or worse, then we know this is something more enduring. Well, guess what? I went back 2 weeks later and I was a lot worse, because I'd opened myself up and sort of had to recognise that something wasn't right. I had counselling for a long period of time, an amazing woman called Angela Markham, who really helped me just explore what was going on, helped me look back in my past and sort of recognise, now this really started when my dad died, helped me notice some habits that have built up in my life. So I'm frankly a sporadic insomniac. I don't really go to sleep, and I haven't since I was 12. I don't really go to sleep before about 1 in the morning. Well, guess what? My dad died at 1 in the morning. And there's something deeply rooted that doesn't want to sort of risk going to sleep and being woken up by something like that. So I recognise these things now. So I found my way over time to own it, to understand it. For me, it's a source of strength, because I know myself better than I think most people know themselves, because I've had to explore, I've had to understand. And along that journey, some of the most profound lessons for me come from my periods of depression. Angela saying to me, and I tell this to everybody, Angela saying to me, when I sat in her room, and I said to her, I feel like everything is wrong. We were living in Bristol. I said, I feel like everything is wrong. I've not been happy in the bank for a while, so maybe it's my job. I need to quit my job. And I feel lonely in Bristol, so maybe it's Bristol. I need to leave Bristol. I mean, Rachel and I have been arguing, so maybe the relationship's not right. In fact, I'm going to quit everything and I'm going to start again. And genuinely, in my mind, I was going to up sticks. I was going to move to New York, because that would be sensible. I was going to move to New York, and I was just going to wipe the slate clean and start again. And Angela had this lovely way of sometimes being quite interventionist, and other times being quite passive and just letting you go. She was quiet for a moment, and then she just said, always run to, never run from. Because if you spend your time running from something, you're looking over your shoulder at the thing you're trying to get away from, you're paying no attention to where you're going to end up. So you take your time and you decide where you run to. And do you know what? That is singularly the most profound thing anyone has ever said to me, because it stopped me. It made me pause, it made me figure it out, it made me make my peace with where I wanted to go. I was off work for 3.5 months when I first bout of depression, and it would have been very easy for me to not go back to that job. Actually, what I did is I told myself, I'm going back because I need to prove to myself that it's not that job. And I went back. And I've had periods of depression throughout. I'm someone who believes that this is a part of me that I will manage throughout my life. Other people have different views, but that's my view. And I kind of embrace it and own it. Yeah.
Wow.
There you go. You did ask, man. I go deep and I go long.
No, that was very, you know what strikes me is that it's very thoughtful. Like you spent time understanding what was the issues, particular issues. It's not vague, it's very precise, it's very specific. You've kind of you've told a story that's very clear in your mind, and you're able to articulate that as well. So it shows that you've connected the dots looking backwards, and it's helped you reflect and make better decisions now. So what would you tell people who are currently facing depression now, or don't know that they're facing depression, but they don't feel the same, they don't feel themselves? What would you say to them?
Yeah. So I'll tell you what, vulnerability is a hard thing, and I think that particularly in today's world, certainly for people who are in professional positions, you can feel an overwhelming amount of pressure to be strong and to show that you're confident and that you're capable, and it's really easy when you're struggling to think that that's a sign of weakness. And so one of the things that I have always said to people I've spoken to who do struggle is there's great strength, right? There's great strength in being that person that's brave enough to say, I want to explore this. Because many people hide from it because they're frightened, because they can't face into it, no judgment. But I think it takes great strength to open it up and face into it. I think seeking help is an important thing. And that comes in many shapes, right? I mean, I've had help from counselling, I've had help from antidepressants, I've had help from courses which are just slightly spiritual and uplifting, all sorts of things. I think finding the things in your life, the people around you that can actually help you explore and open up in a safe way, I think is important.
So knowing yourself seems to be the key to really finding happiness. But why is it difficult for people to undergo that exercise, to know themselves? Or maybe difficult isn't the right word. Why do people either run away from it or don't bother to reflect or go to therapy or speak to people, particularly men as well? Yeah. Why is it that people don't feel that that sense to talk about their problems?
That's a big question.
Yeah,
it's a big question. It's an important one.
Yeah, because I've seen a lot of themes in the last couple of episodes about like really knowing yourself is the true key to happiness. Because a lot of pain and suffering and anxiety comes from what you think others think about you, and not having an alignment to knowing who you are and feeling content with who you are. Yeah. So how
and I think it's a very natural human thing for us to do, to describe the outcomes we want. I want well-behaved, polite children with expansive thinking, blah, blah, blah. I go to university or I go to school and I want good grades, because grades are important and achieving exam results is important. I go to university because I want to get a job that looks like this. So we're constantly trying to fit in with the system around us that we've created. And I think that's a normal thing that's been around for millions of years, right? That's how society works, that's how we collectively work together. But when that's sat in an environment that the pressures of that are so great and so continuous, I think it's easy to lose ourselves. I think it's easy to say, I fit in to the education system. I fit into secondary and higher education. I fit in the work environment. In order to get on, I need to do these things. In order to get promoted, I have to look this way, behave this way, achieve results that look and feel like this. And so we're constantly fitting in, and we don't often stop to ask, who am I? No one really asks us that anymore. When was the last time, if you think about it, when was the last time, be it in a work or even a social context, someone said, who are you? Not who are you, what's your name, but who are you? What do you stand for? What do you think about the world around you? I think we've lost a degree of curiosity about it, and it's part, interestingly, it's part of why now felt like the right time for me to part with John Lewis and start my own thing. I will always be in love with John Lewis as a business, but part of what I want to do is bring some of that more holistic thinking, and I don't mean that in a sort of spiritual way. I mean that in a, we don't have to be in boardrooms and forget the fact that human beings are very philosophical creatures that think about things in quite ethical ways, that are impacted by the environments and the space that we're in. Those are equally important to our deliberations and our considerations. But when you're in that space, you are actually getting at the human condition. You're asking people what they are and what they stand for. And I just think over a long period of time, we've stepped away from doing some of that. And so if I link it back to mental health, I think part of the challenge is we are no longer particularly well versed at doing that naturally. And then you layer in a bunch of stuff, right? You layer in the stereotype, and these are definitely stereotypes, but you layer in the stereotype of stiff upper lip in Britain, right? We don't talk about our emotions. You layer in the male mentality, which says you definitely don't talk about your emotions, right? You layer in the sort of be strong driver that just says, success looks like being strong and being in control of things. And if you're depressed, surely you can't be in control of yourself, right? If you need help, well, that must mean you're weak, right? And so we layer all of that in, and it's then socially really difficult to open up. It's socially really difficult to question what it means to be a person today. And so I'm inspired by people and organisations that have rediscovered this sense of curiosity. I'm inspired by what I see as this emerging sort of shift, almost a tidal wave that's on the way, particularly from young businesses, and by young I mean the people in them, and I mean the people that are designing them, that are figuring out new models, new ways of working, because they're asking broader questions. They're saying, I don't have to exist in this system, I can create a different system. They're asking curious questions about the human condition. That I think is where the expansive place is, and the more we go to that, the more I think we create a society where it's not only accepted that you can operate with vulnerability, you can open yourself up and you can ask what you stand for, but it's encouraged, and it's embraced. The more we do things, as my wife and I have, of choosing the schools for our kids based on which ones we believe are going to enable them to be a whole person and find their best selves, not the ones that just gets the great grades for putting them through a system, then we're teaching them and showing them that it's okay. It's okay to be you and to explore and discover what that means. I've gone deep again, but you get my sense of it.
So much. This is so good. I'm just fascinated because what you're saying resonates deeply with me, because I almost got lost in the system. I got lost. What I mean by that is the metrics and the promotions and the competition, all these things that you're always competing or comparing against. Especially when you're young and there's so much going on. that I had mentors, I had people like you, I had other people who helped me align myself back to always try and search for who you are, what makes you happy, understanding your past, and that in itself really took me out of that rat race, if you want to call it that, and it allowed me to find peace and using faith as well, but also just a better understanding of who I am. I'm still not there yet, but
none of us are. But being on the path to it is what matters. You know, I do think it's difficult in. I'm going to sound like an anti-capitalist, which I'm definitely not.
Okay.
But I do think it's difficult in. Is it gone? No, we're back. I do think it's difficult in quite a westernized model where success generally looks like financial growth, generally looks like hierarchical movement, you know, all those sort of things which indicate a successful life. I think it's difficult. I think it's really difficult. You know, I'm 41, right? I do very well for myself. I've had jobs that pay very well, and I don't have to worry at the moment. all things can change. I don't have to worry. So it's easy for me to say this. Were I my daughter's age, right, I would be terrified. Now, she's only 11, so she's not, right? But in the next 10 years, she's going to enter the workforce. Will she ever be able to afford a house? The amount of money that she'll have to earn even to pay rent, let alone to buy a house if she chooses to do that. If she wants to have an active social life, you know, cost of living is rising and rising. And therefore you can see that people start to lean towards, what do I need to do in order to be able to exist in this world? You know, how much have I got to earn in order to have a place of my own? How much have I got to earn in order to feel like I can get out and meet people and do things, because very little in the world is for free. And therefore I need a job. But I don't just need a job that's not going to pay me very well and is going to result in me being, you know, beneath the living wage, for example, because nobody wants to be in that place. We want to strive for more so we can sustain ourselves. Therefore, I'm going to have to compete. And I'm going to have to compete to be better than the next person, so that I get the opportunity for growth and promotion. And if I'm going to compete, I need to know what I'm competing on. And what I'm competing on is in the eyes of that person looking like this and achieving that. And then all of a sudden you're back into fitting in. So, you know, I don't say anything that I've said thinking it's easy. I think it's fiendishly difficult. Right. And I can understand how we all end up there. You know, I count myself as lucky in a funny way to have had the life experiences I've had, to be the sort of person that naturally thinks like this, to be able to stand outside the system and look at it and kind of go, isn't this odd? But I go back to what inspires me. I don't have a problem finding people that think in a similar way. That gives me hope.
So, last question, and I always ask this question to the people that come onto my podcast. And the question is, you might need to think about it, but it might not. It might just come naturally.
All right.
Exactly, yes. So it is, how would you describe your leadership style?
How would I describe my leadership style? So, I'm quite an open leader, by which I mean I share a lot. I mean, you're getting this in the conversation, right? I'm open. I share how I think and how I feel. I'd like to think, others may differ in their view of me, but I'd like to think I'm not a cloying or sort of, you know, micromanaging leader. I trust people. I start from the point of trusting people. Some people start at the other end of the spectrum, but I've always been in and out of work the person that trusts first. So I trust people are working because they want to achieve something, because they are inspired to get somewhere, because they want to be successful, and I start on that basis, which means I put that trust in them. You know, I assume capability rather than assume incapability, if that makes sense. I think I'm fair. That when we succeed as a team, I don't take the glory. If you've done it, I'm going to tell the world that you've done that because I'm proud of you. And I'd like to think that my, this is a funny word to use maybe, but my humanity leads people to feel that they're working, when they work with me, that it's a partnership in the way we work. One of the things I've sort of taken quite to heart from my time at John Lewis was a reflection that as a leader in John Lewis, you work for the people that report to you, not just the other way around. Yeah. That feels quite natural to me, and I quite like that sense of servant leadership, if you like. And I guess the last thing, and I've been reflecting on this with somebody today actually, the last thing for me, I guess, is I don't think I'm the best or the expert or the finished article. I think we are all on a spectrum. I'd rather have a team of people who are way better than me. A, because I grow, and B, because I think it gives them spaces to be and places to go. I want to work with people who are bloody brilliant. For me, there is also the humility, I guess, of, you know, I'm good at some stuff, but I'm not good at everything. And I want people around me who embrace that and accept that. That's probably how I'd describe it.
Yeah, no, great. This has been an amazing podcast. I've been so encouraged, inspired, motivated, but just it's really great that I've got this platform to have you on to share what you shared today, and I'm just hoping people will listen and will feel that it resonated with them, and they will take some things away from it and possibly listen back as well, because you said so many gems, so many areas where people like find it difficult to navigate, and you've given some clear approaches of how you dealt with it, and it was really good. And I just want to say thank you, Rory, for coming on the podcast. And
My pleasure. I've really enjoyed this. Thank you so much.
No worries. Thank you.
Yeah, cheers, man.
Good. Oh, Rory, man, that was good. Like, it was very good. Like, it makes me feel like, you know, I haven't had these conversations with you for a long time, and it just reminds me of, you know, to always keep your contacts close and to keep up to date with them. And like sometimes, you know, I get stuck in my world of like, just trying to do projects by project, but not kind of touching base with you and stuff.
It's hard though, right? Yeah. This is the thing. I think we get so consumed by our worlds, and me too, right? Me too. I mean, it's been a revelation for me at this point in my career to just stop from it. As far as I'm concerned, I'm probably going to work for another 40 years, so I think I can stop, right? Right? This is the thing. I say to people who are worried about moments of pause, I keep saying to people, how long do you think you're going to work for? So if you think you're going to work for another 40 years of your life, are you seriously telling me that a week of pause is too much? Yeah. It's really not, right? It's a tiny amount.
But some people do like loads of pauses.
Yeah, well, some people need to stop pausing. but you know, that sort of sense of being immersed in our world, it's not a bad thing. It's a perfectly healthy thing. You just got to add moments to it where you kind of go, and now take it in. You know,